Good afternoon. Call the meeting on the Committee of Fiscal Affairs to order. The first item of business, well, before we start, I'd like to welcome our newest member of the committee and our newest member, trustee member, Judah Griffiths. Judah, welcome to the Fiscal Affairs Committee.
Thank you.
You might have been on this committee once before, I think. It might have been.
Possible.
With that, at the approval of the minutes for the meeting on November 1st. So moved. Second?
Second.
Any changes, questions? All in favor, say aye. All right, motion carries. There's a resolution authorizing the General Counsel to execute a contract on behalf of the Borough of Manhattan Community College to purchase custodial services for its leased facilities at 70 Murray Street, the West Street Trailers, and 108 and 108 Cooper Street. The contract shall be awarded by the college to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder pursuant to the law and university regulations. Such purchase shall not exceed the total estimated cost of $414,000 chargeable to FY 2011. The contract shall the contract shall include 4 one-year options for the university to renew in its best interest. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Any questions or information needed from the Chancellor? There being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
We now go off to reports, and it's my great honor to give Trustee Pantaleo an opportunity to talk about our audit.
Thank you. We met with and were presented with information regarding the audit from our accountants last week. I see, and I'm happy to say that I see Barry Kaufman here. Barry, is there anything about the audit that you'd like to share with us?
No, I think it was a good results from KPMG. KPMG is the firm that we use to do our external auditing. The one thing I will call the attention to is there was reported by KPMG a significant deficiency, and that had to do with a reporting requirement for one of the colleges. The recommendation from the auditors was that we implement a quarterly closing of our books, both at the central office and at the colleges. We had indicated in our response to the auditors that the quarterly closing right now was just not that feasible, and we were moving toward a mid-year closing and then a final closing. The reason being that we're still working with a number of different financial systems. We have our legacy systems as well as the new CUNY First system, and it just becomes more of a burden both on the colleges and on the central office to try and do this quarterly. Once we have fully implemented the CUNY First system, we believe then it would be possible to move toward the quarterly, and our expectation is perhaps even move toward a monthly closing as well. But for the time being, we think we can control the situation by having a closing at mid-year and then at the end of the year.
Barry, I fully understand why auditors want to do a quarterly because it coincides with what they see in the private sector with the reporting requirements. Right. Did they give a reason why? Because you do it semi-annually, do it twice a year. The value of doing it after every 3 months?
We actually last year we did it just at the end of the year, and that was their concern. And so what they would like to see is a more frequent
mid-year,
at least the mid-year and then the end of the year, and that would prevent, in their view, and we agree with them, it would prevent the kind of catch-up that a lot of the schools are engaged in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That concludes the report.
Okay, thank you. Now we have a report from Associate Vice Chancellor Matt Sapienza on the eve of the state budget.
Yes, thanks, Chair Lowder.
Any word today from the Budget Division as to what we might see tomorrow? What
No,
CUNY will see?
we don't have any details. The State Division of Budget is waiting for the governor to issue his budget tomorrow. The governor is scheduled to issue the budget at 1 o'clock tomorrow. It's our expectation, subsequent to his press conference, that we will receive details on what it means for us. You know, I don't think I'm going out on a limb by saying that we certainly expect that we're going to have reductions in there, just as all the state agencies are going to have reductions. but we're hopeful that it'll be a budget that, we can manage. And I want to keep everyone in mind that tomorrow's just the first act of the budget dance in Albany, and the legislature will have their chance. We'll have a chance to lobby. The chancellor is due to testify in front of the state legislature on February 10th on the executive budget, so we'll be up in Albany doing that. And so we will have opportunities to make our case, but as soon as the budget is out tomorrow, we'll quickly begin our analysis, and the chancellor, as is our practice, will send something out to the trustees and the college presidents detailing the effects of the executive budget on CUNY. On this, just very quickly, I want to mention on the city budget, we received some good news recently. The mayor, in his November financial plan, had reduced all city agencies in order to try to reduce the city deficit for next fiscal year. And the mayor implemented about $600 million worth of cuts to all city agencies. And the CUNY Community College piece of that was about $12 million. It was $11.8 million of reductions in the current year. The good news that we received is that the city council restored $4 million of that cut in the current year. And so we're very grateful to the council, to the speaker and the chair of the finance and higher ed committees for that restoration. And I think that that's really going to help the community colleges get through this year with minimal damage. So that was a piece of good news that we received. The mayor will be issuing his preliminary budget for next fiscal year on February 17th. So February, again, is going to be a busy month for us in terms of the state exec coming out, the mayor's preliminary budget coming out, and again, as soon as we have any information on either one, we'll be presenting analyses to the trustees and to the college presidents.
Any questions? Matt, I have one. I don't know if you saw some of the articles that were coming out of Albany today about the governor's op-ed piece that he's got in the Times Union tomorrow about various inflators and things that I'm quite honestly surprised he think is not. Does that have any impact? Are we one of those organizations? I don't think we are.
Yeah.
But I just want to address that.
No, it shouldn't have any impact in terms of the governor's concern about these formula that are used to determine Medicaid spending and spending at the lower ed level for the K through 12 schools. We do have some formula-based aid that is really for the community colleges, but it's a state determined number. It's not
If they wanted
formula
to change
driven.
it, it's the law, but the legislature can change the law.
Right.
Correct.
It's a per capita formula. The governor will make a recommendation about how much we should be getting per capita, and the legislature either will change that or not.
So that shouldn't affect us to a great extent.
Right, we're outside of that. Just to what we're talking about, which is truly inside baseball, the governor today issued an op-ed piece that he's going to have in various papers around the state tomorrow, wherein that there are these hidden inflators within inside the state budget that mandate that, for example, Medicaid go up 13% and education funding go up 13%. And then there were all these other types of things that he made reference to. And he feigned shock that these existed. Careful, I'm on television. But he did feign shock that they existed. They existed when he was advisor to his governor, the first Governor Cuomo, but that they were there. But he actually made a statement in his article that the gap or the deficit of $10 billion, if you wrote that 13% down to just the rate of inflation, the gap is only $1 billion. So it's real, but at the same point, it's a law, and I'll let others decide this, but I don't think one legislature can tie another legislature. They can always change the law and all of that. I was concerned that we had some formulaic, and I didn't think so, and we're not looking for requests much above the rate of inflation, as I remember our budget.
No, our mandatory cost increases are, expenditure driven. We do projections on what we think they'll be, and most of them are at the rate of inflation. The one mandatory cost that is above the rate of inflation, and we're no different than the other government organizations in this area, which is fringe benefits. Fringe benefits has been growing at about 10 or 11% per year, which is way above the rate of inflation. But again, we're not any different from the state.
And
of
again,
New York
that's not by formula, that's, we sit down with DOB, we show them what we think the increase in our fringe benefits, they either agree or don't agree.
Right, and there are actuaries involved.
Yes.
It's more complicated than just a
But it's no
30-year.
formula that we think every year is going to be.
Now the report on investments with Janet Green. Janet?
Okay, for 2010, we had another volatile, but ended up the year positive. A lot happened in the fourth quarter, as you know. The global equity markets rose about 12-13%, depending upon which currency you're looking at. U.S. equities were up 15%, and emerging market equities were up 19%. Given that the Federal Reserve has maintained the policy rates at such low levels, the credit markets in the U.S. have increased this year as well, with the Barclays aggregate up 6.6%, and Barclays high yield bonds up 15%. I think last year they were up about 78%. So commodities also rose sharply for the year, and as you know, we now have the real asset portfolio, so we have exposure there. The pool ended up the year up 11.8%, so that the market value at the end of the year is close to $160 million. Two of our asset classes are indexed, that being U.S. equities and U.S. fixed income. So we saw benchmark-like returns, tracking to the benchmark, what you would expect. The other asset classes, international equity, emerging market equities, the hedge fund funds, as well as the real assets, are actively managed strategies. And there we saw that all of our portfolios beat their benchmarks, in some cases by a substantial margin. For example, our emerging market manager, Aberdeen, was up over 840 basis points above its benchmark. The hedge fund of funds, which really only started in April, so we don't have a full year of returns, was up 130 basis points, and the real assets up 110 basis points above their benchmark. I know that some people are interested in the hedge fund area, and so that the returns that are shown on page 2, I just want to stress, are since inception numbers, but for the year, each of our managers had higher returns. In the case of Evanston, they had a return of about 9.8, and that's estimated at this point. And Archstone had a return of about 6.7. So at this point in time, to get any sense of how we have done in terms of our endowment peers, the numbers are, all of the numbers are not available, I should say, but from the numbers we have seen so far, we're above median. And recently there was a piece in Pensions and Investments about fiscal year performance, and we had a 12.5% return, and so we were above some very prestigious funds, not because of the way, I mean, we were certainly not allocated the same way, but probably because of that, and good selection of managers. We outperformed Harvard, Yale, and Stanford, so.
Yeah, Harvard and Yale were like 2% and 3% or something. How the mighty have fallen.
Yeah, but when you think about the pace.
Right.
So it's nice to be able to say that anyway.
Aberdeen, did we select a year and a half ago? Aberdeen?
Aberdeen came on board, I think that was I'll have the exact date for you here. It's certainly been over a year.
It was 09.
It was 09?
Yeah.
April of 09.
Yeah.
And so since inception, they're up 55 about 55%.
Yeah, yeah.
Very well.
We should follow with our own personal investments and trail with it, so we're doing well.
So unless there are any questions, we'll look forward to, we're having a special, or our quarterly subcommittee meeting on February 7th. We'll be discussing, it'll be an extension of actually the last discussion we had to fill out the allocation to the non-marketable alternatives. We've got some suggestions for that. We also have a speaker coming from Skadden Arps to talk about the New York Prudent Management of Institutional Funds Act. We also are having a special information session for the benefit of the colleges in that area on the 3rd. So, feel free to come to that as well.
Can you give us a 1 or 2 sentence what the new law is? And I realize we're going to hear this from Skadden, but just to get a framework.
It basically is an extension of the MIFA, which was never passed in the state of New York. We fell under UMIFA. And the difference being that the latter regulations allow invasion or prudent invasion of corpus.
For purposes of paying expenses of the fund.
Right, right. I'm just talking in terms of the investment part of
Right,
the
I
law.
understand.
But there are, the fiduciaries are also held to a much higher standard under the New York law. And there's, so you'll see in the future that we'll have minutes and we'll ask you to sign off on them just so that we have the documentation of the discussion in certain aspects. There are all sorts of criteria that must be considered when coming up with the investment policy and spending policy. What's even more interesting, what we found in the discussions that we've had is that, first of all, the decision has to go to the board. And the board could decide to, allow invasion or not allow invasion. Given the onerous aspects of the New York law, if you do allow invasion, you are then subject to notifying every one of your participants, in my case, the pool, and there are 800. And then you have different spending regimes that you would have to track going out.
Can you explain or describe invasion?
Invasion would be the original invasion of the, you have the original gift that was made by a donor, an endowed fund, and that fund grows in value. We have a spending policy which allows 5% of the rolling 12-quarter average market value, and
Be used for operating purposes.
right. Right. As long as the ending market value is above the original gift by that 5%, you can give under the current rules, under UMIFA, you can't invade if it were less than that. The New York MIFA, the new regulation, would allow at the board's discretion invasion even if the fund were underwater, so that you don't even have that 5%. But it has to be prudent invasion, taking into consideration the needs of the university, of that particular school, of different economic factors, of inflation. There are a number of 8 different factors that you have to take into consideration.
And you need to notify the donor.
And you would need to notify the donor if they're available, and give them 90 days to respond. And then if you do that, your accounting becomes relatively more complicated, because you would have different spending regimes that you need to track going forward. But regardless, for any new gifts that are made beyond September 17th of 2010, when the law was enacted, those can invade the corpus on a prudent basis.
Will Rick be in attendance at the Discussions?
I don't know if Rick will be there, excuse me, but there'll be several attorneys from his office will be there, and we planned it with one of them.
Because I'm interested in knowing, for all of us here specifically, fiduciary responsibility, so that they're very clear to us, who I believe we are the fiduciary.
Yes.
We are, according to the attorney, we are. Dan Kurtz from Skadden Arps is the consultant that we've been using. He's consulted for the university previously, and he made it clear that we are the fiduciary. The funds were accepted by the university for the colleges, and we are the fiduciary for those funds.
We being CUNY as an institution.
Pardon?
We that you're referring to as CUNY as an institution.
Yes, for those funds that are in the investment pool. For
Right.
those funds that are with the foundation is the fiduciary.
And what about the trustees who were fiduciaries? What's our exposure?
I think that's something we can ask Kurtz to opine on.
There is delegation under the new regulation, so that if you decide to delegate, you're absolved of liability. But it's interesting. Apparently, the New York version is much more onerous than other states with respect to this notification. And we're kind of hoping that the Q&A that comes out of Albany eventually may address that.
But that's currently true. New York State is more difficult than. Period. I mean, it's just,
Any further?
yeah.
In looking at our existing investment policy, there are very few things that we will add. We may take the opportunity to make some other revisions while we're at it, such as, maybe a conflicts of interest that would be specifically spelled out.
Does the regulation of this fall within the Secretary of State or within the
Attorney General.
Attorney General?
So it's jail.
So we just
Right.
put your hands up.
And there's also a section on reasonable fees, so it's interesting. It's going to be a challenge for everyone in CUNY, I think, especially the foundations.
foundation funds, right.
Yeah.
There's implications as well, and Chancellor about the fund.
Unrelated question. Janet, could you, for those of us who are relatively new to this committee, I'm trying to get my arms around the finance function of CUNY, just understanding it from a flow chart standpoint. Where does the Chief Investment Officer fit in, and to whom do you report within the finance organization?
I report directly to Barry, and there's a dotted line to Matt, and that's where it falls. So it falls within
you're in the
the Office
finance-
of the University
Yes.
Controller.
Okay.
Within the Office of
Yeah,
Budget
she's
and
within the
Finance
Office of Budget.
of the university.
That's what I was getting at. Thank you.
Questions? I think you'll hear tomorrow before 1 o'clock, not after 1 o'clock. If they keep any tradition, you'll get it right before.
Hope so.
Cry while you're watching television.
We'll be sending out a summary to everybody.
All right. Is there any other business? Does anybody have anything else to talk? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.